Hello everyone, I am Fran and welcome back to my channel, Fran Look in the Pages. Today's video was supposed to be my 2022 reading wrap-up video, but that's not it. Clearly, you clicked on it, you read the title, it's not that video. I've been wanting to film more recommendation videos and Valentine's Day is coming up and I really wanted to recommend you guys some love stories, some sapphic love stories to read for Valentine's Day. So in case you were looking for a story with a sapphic romance in the background or at the forefront, you're in the right place. I won't just be talking about romance books. I have 4 different books to recommend to you, and each of them belongs to a different genre or has a very specific tone that the others don't have. So depending on the vibe that you want for your Valentine's Day, depending on the genre that you like the most, you might find it in these videos. I just wanted to make sure that I could cover all the bases and that I could make everyone happy. Now, I do have another video up on my channel where I talk about all the books featuring lesbian characters that I had read up till that point. So in case you're interested in more recommendations with specifically lesbians, I will leave it linked up in the cards and in the description down below. These are books that I've read lately and that I still haven't had the chance to talk about here on my channel. So these recommendations from me are new, okay? I do talk a lot about queer books here on my channel that feature different representations, but I'm in a sapphic relationship. I'm a lesbian, and if I'm going to give you reading recommendations for Valentine's Day, I'm going to be focusing on the ladies. So without further ado, let's see what these books are. The first book that I want to recommend to you is indeed a romance book, and it is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrun. This is Alison Cochrun's second book. The first one, her debut, was The Charm Offensive, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't read it yet, but I really want to because it has the sort of premise that I'm really into. This one is all about Ellie. She is an artist. She draws webcomic, but at the moment she's working as a barista in a coffee shop and she's a bit broke. So she's having financial problems, particularly because she always sends money to her mom. Her mom keeps on spending her money away and she just calls her daughter up when she needs money. Ellie is friends with the owner of this coffee shop, Andrew, and one day they find themselves at a bar. They're talking, drinking, and he tells her all about how his grandfather died, and in his will he said that his nephew can inherit the money only if he gets married. They keep drinking and talking, and one thing leads to another, and the morning after this night out, Ellie and Andrew wake up together and they have signed a contract of sorts on a napkin where they say that they will get married to each other, they'll pretend to be in love and to get married, they will stay married for a few months just so that Andrew can inherit the money, and when they divorce he will give Ellie like 10%, if I'm not mistaken, of the cut so that she gets paid for the trouble of having to marry him and all that stuff. Ellie doesn't really love the idea, but she's really broke, she needs the money, her friends sort of, and so she decides to help him out. But all of this happens around Christmas time and Andrew's family invites them over to spend time with them at this huge cabin in the mountains that they have. When they reach this cabin, Ellie finds out that Andrew's sister is the woman that she had hooked up for one night the past Christmas 1 year prior, and she was really falling in love with this woman. Even if they had met just for one day, they had that immediate incredible connection. Then something happened and they had never seen each other again after that day. Of course, trouble ensues. You have this situation where these two women are clearly, if not in love, at least very into each other, and they keep, staring at each other across the room and stuff like that. The whole thing was just so good. This book has my favorite trope when it comes to romance books, which is fake dating. I really appreciated this book's spin on the fake dating trope because she's not fake dating with the person that she actually has feelings for. She's fake dating her brother, which created all these weird scenarios in which they find themselves in. Also because at this cabin there's a non-binary person who Andrew is in love with. You have Andrew and Jack's mom and grandmas at the cabin. One of the grandmas sees what's happening, and she was just hilarious because she was rooting for the two women just like I was, and just like any reader reading the book would. So it was just so hilarious and so much fun. This book is set during the Christmas time, but it also has like a Valentine's Day sort of connection. I think it would be really perfect to be read around Valentine's Day, and it was just written so well. It was just done so well. I loved the representation. We have so many queer characters, such a diverse cast of queer characters. Jack is a lesbian. Her friend, I don't remember their name, but we have non-binary representation. And Ellie, our main protagonist, I think she was either pansexual or bisexual, and she's also demisexual, and she suffers from anxiety. I loved that there were jokes about how some queer relationships are. For instance, there is a moment where Ellie and Jack are not really talking to each other. They're kind of skirting around the truth, and so Jack tells Ellie, let's just stop acting like this and let's be queer women. Let's actually communicate and talk about what we're thinking and feeling honestly. And that scene just had me laughing so hard. So yes, I really loved this book. I really recommend it. I just loved everything about this book. This is how you do queer sapphic romances. This is just how you do it. And this book was recommended to me by my girlfriend, and she's just the expert when it comes to sapphic women loving women books. So I loved it so much. I 100% recommend it to anyone, and I cannot wait to read Alison Cochrun's debut. If it's anything like this one, I know that I'm going to love it. The next book that I want to recommend is a very weird book. It's hard to talk about it without actually spoiling anything, because I went into it without knowing much. And I think that's why I loved this book as much as I did, because I was truly not expecting it. It came as a shock. And I am talking about So Happy For You by Celia Laskey. This one is an adult thriller contemporary book of sorts about two women, Robin and Ellie. They have been friends since they were very little, and Ellie is about to get married. They are in a society that is obsessed with weddings. Not that our society isn't, because it is, but it's so much worse in this world. Like, if by your 30s you aren't married, you get tagged as rotten or something like that. And women are just out there looking for the men to marry, and they do all these rituals before they get married to make sure that they're pure and to ensure that their wedding is going to be happy and successful. For instance, there was a case reported in the newspapers where the bride-to-be drank the menstrual blood of a virgin in order to prepare herself and her body to her wedding. Things like that. It can get very twisted and weird and dark, just to make you understand the sort of tone that this book has. Anyway, we're in this sort of society, and Robin, our main character, she is a queer academic, and so she doesn't really approve of this obsession of this culture around weddings, and so she doesn't really know if she should accept. But it's Ellie, it's her best friend, and she's really asking her to be there for her on that day, and so in the end she decides to accept. But things get weird because the preparations for the wedding is like a series of tests to prove the loyalty of these maids of honor to the bride, and then weird things keep on happening, and we also get to see how the friendship between these two women grew and changed throughout time, how they became friends and how their friendship evolved. I do recommend this to Valentine's Day because Robin, our main protagonist, is in a very happy relationship with another woman that supports her and wants her to be there for her best friend, for Robin's best friend on her wedding day. But then you have this whole other thing happening with the wedding and the story, and it was so good. Like, if you love mysteries, if you love thrillers, then you should absolutely give this one a chance. You would not see where it's headed until the moment where it's heading where it's heading. I don't know if that made sense, but once you read this book, it'll make sense. And I absolutely recommend you go and listen to the audiobook because it's narrated by Kristen Sie, who is one of my favorite voices out there in the audiobook narrators world. She could just narrate anything and I would listen to it and love it. And she's actually the reason why I decided to pick this book up, because I was not sure before. I had read another book by Celia Laskey that I hadn't really loved, but then I saw that this one was narrated by Kristen Sie and I wanted to give it a try, and I was not disappointed. It was just weird and fucked up. If you want a thriller for your Valentine's Day, or if you're not really into Valentine's Day, or if you're not really into romance or love or all those things, then this might be the book for you. I have a fantasy book for all you fantasy readers out there, and I'm among you, so I totally understand you. I don't want to be predictable. I am not going to recommend you go and read The Priory of the Orange Tree, because that for me is a given now if you've been on this channel for any amount of time, and also that is a very long book, so it's going to take you some time to read it. It's not really a quick Valentine's Day sort of read. If you haven't read it yet, because it's kind of been everywhere in the past year, if you haven't read it yet, I recommend you read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This one is a fantasy that is not too long. It's not really a novella. I think it's a bit longer than the average length of a novella, but it's still relatively short in the world of fantasy books. At least. This one is a cozy fantasy book. It's a fantasy book that doesn't really have high stakes. It doesn't have major things happening, major events, wars, battles, and all that stuff. It's a very cozy book about an orc who is tired of fighting, of traveling, of beating other creatures up, but in order to get rich and treasure hunt and all that stuff. And she decides to head to the small town of Thun and open a coffee shop. And she does that in this town where nobody knows what coffee is. She has to start from scratch, and when she reaches this town, she meets some unlikely friends who start helping her out, building the place. This other character likes baking, and so they start inventing these pastries that could go along very well with the coffees, such as croissants and other treats that, of course, we know what they are, but in a world where nobody had ever seen them before, it was just so much fun to read the descriptions and how the characters and creatures reacted to those smells and tastes. It was so much fun. It was such a pleasure to read, and of course there's something happening because there's like a mob situation who goes to the local businesses in order to ask for money to ensure the safety of the business and the neighborhood and all that stuff. And our orc Viv, she doesn't want to stoop so low as to pay the mob in order to keep her place running, her business running, and so she kind of has to deal with that. But again, it's very low stakes, and you just get to read about these creatures finding out what a coffee is, what a coffee shop is, and they just go there and hang out and enjoy a nice cup of coffee. And then they introduce the lattes, and then they introduce the croissants and all those things, and it was just so lovely. And the cinnamon rolls, I think the cinnamon rolls were there as well. And me personally, I don't like them because I don't like cinnamon. Come at me. But all the rest, it was so much fun to read, and I really enjoyed it. It was such a nice cozy read. The last book that I have to recommend to you guys is actually a novella, and if you wanted, you could pick it up and finish it within Valentine's Day. The audiobook, which I listened to because it was narrated by January Lavoie, and I adore January Lavoie. For me, she's second only to Kristen Sie, so that's a high praise if I've ever heard one, at least where I'm concerned. The audiobook is, I think, 4 hours long or slightly less than that, so you can really pick it up and finish it within the day. This one is an historical fiction / fantasy novella. It is set in Chicago in the 1940s, and our main character is Helen. She used to be a warlock for the Brotherhood of the Compass, but 10 years prior to the beginning of this novella, she sold her soul to the demon in order to save her brother's life, who had died in a car accident. So she sold her soul and she got 10 more years for herself, and her brother got to keep on living. Was expelled from the Brotherhood of the Compass, and now she is a PI, a private investigator. She mostly works for this enigmatic woman called Marlowe, and her current job is to go to a certain place where a murder happened and take some photos of the murder scene. And when she shows the photos of the crime scene to Marlowe, Marlowe tells her that she has to keep on investigating and that she has to bring her the name of the White City vampire. And if she does that, she will give her back her soul. That's an offer that Helen cannot refuse. She only has a few days left and she's not ready to leave her life. She's not ready to leave the woman that she loves and that she's in a very happy relationship with. She wants to move to California with her and have a happy, long life with her. And so she decides to investigate on this crime, despite the fact that it will be very dangerous for her to do so. I loved this novella so much. I was not expecting it to be the emotional journey that it was. My feelings were all over the place. I was just so in love with Helen and Edith. I loved to see a couple that was already an established couple. They were very in love with each other. There was this tenderness and yearning between the two of them, and it is set in Chicago in the 1940s. Queers did not have it easy back then. I mean, not that we have it easy today, but you see that if they caught you, then they would put you in asylums, in mental institutions. Queers would be electrocuted in these asylums in order to eradicate the queerness out of them. It's so fucked up. That's what was happening, but you don't see this evil touching these two women. They're so pure and so in love with each other, and it was so lovely and heartbreaking to see in a way because of what happens throughout the novella. And the ending was lovely and heartbreaking and sad but hopeful. So many feelings all over the place, but the love that pervades this book was so intense and so beautiful and so pure that I cannot not recommend this book for Valentine's Day. It was fantasy in the sense that we have some magical elements. Helen was a warlock, there's the Brotherhood of the Compass, we see rituals happening, but they mostly have to do with religion and angels and demons. And it's not quite fantasy in the way that you might think, but I just loved how it was done. I loved that the magic system in this novella was so interwoven and interconnected with faith and religion. The author doesn't really go too much into details, but she does it enough for what is needed for the purpose of the novella. You get glimpses of a very carefully outlined magic system, and that's exactly what was needed. I was left completely satisfied, which is something that is hard to do with novellas. I just thought that it was done perfectly in this novella, and I loved it so much, and I definitely recommend it to you. And this was it for this video. Thank you so much for watching it. Please let me know in the comments if you have read any of these books or if you would like to, and particularly if I convinced you in picking any of them up for Valentine's Day. Also, let me know in the comments what some of your book recommendations would be for Valentine's Day. What is the vibe that you would like your Valentine's Day to have? Do you like fantasy? Do you like pure romance? Do you like mystery thrillers? Like, what is it that you like? Let me know in the comments down below because I would love to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you very soon in my next video, and until then, have a good one, take care, and keep reading. Warm hugs! Bye!